Hello guys, no running water, no electricity, huge gasoline queues, and no, I'm not talking about the temporarily occupied Ukrainian territories, I'm talking about Russia. Many regions inside the Russian Federation, even those that are not that often visited by the Ukrainian drones, suffer serious economic problems. They are the consequences of Putin's failed three-day war that now turned into a full-scale war on the Russian territory. With each day, problems with gasoline grow bigger. This results in higher prices, and fewer regions can actually afford themselves full electricity lighting on the streets during nights. A lot of utility problems remained unsolved, and most importantly, they reach the regions that are not very interested in the war, that suffer from it and start asking questions: what will happen next? And Putin does have a plan, his autumn general conscription, which is totally unsupported by the Russian population. Even in 2022 they did not like the idea, but now, after years of constant failures and empty regional and federal budgets, trust me, they are terrified. Let's have a closer look how this economic mismanagement and extremely exhausting war destroys the Russian Federation from inside. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in Ukraine, and if you want to see the defeat and demilitarization of Russia, that is the only working peace plan, subscribe and do share these videos to spread the truth and demonstrate your solidarity with Ukraine. So let's begin with the visit of the Ukrainian drones on another Russian oil refinery, the one that was operating more or less effectively but stopped working after that visit in Salavat, Bashkortostan. And Bashkortostan is a republic located very far away from Moscow. That definitely does not correspond to the standards of Putin's Ruski Mir doctrine, because it is a totally different nation. And more of such republics begin asking questions: when will the special military operation end? Because not only they literally do not care about the expansion of the Russian Empire, but they also do not want to share the consequences. And that Bashkortostan, which oil refinery was recently neutralized, already has serious problems with electricity lighting on the streets. In many of their big cities, they simply cannot afford that light because of Russia's status, because of their economy, not because of the drone strikes. Just think how empty their federal budget, their regional budgets are if they need to switch off light on the streets in a country that they describe as very strong and very rich. Again, if you have a closer look at the state of the Russian Federation in 2022, you can definitely see a difference. And this difference shows how one by one different industries shut down, how one by one regions become bankrupt. And they expect some support from the Kremlin, but Kremlin cannot afford it. Right now, perhaps number one problem of Putin's regime is the gasoline crisis, because, well, it's extremely humiliating for the Kremlin dictator, previously known as a rich owner of the country-gas station, but also because people do need cars, people use various transport, and the gasoline prices and anyway, a possibility to buy it influences literally everything: services, prices on food, and even education, I don't know, tourism. Tourism is off in Russia, first of all, because the Black Sea shore is dangerous. You know that our drones keep destroying Russian warships like the one yesterday, Izumrud near Novorossiysk, and also because people cannot afford traveling as gasoline is very expensive. And there are a lot of regions where you simply cannot buy it. And people spend days in those queues, so of course they talk about Putin. Of course they speak about his master strategist talents that destroy the Russian Federation faster than Putin wanted to destroy Ukraine. So gasoline crisis has no solution, because oil refineries cannot be repaired that quickly, and as you see, Ukrainian drones keep visiting them. I do not report about each of such visits because these are no news to us, right? and no news to Russia. What is new? That they have serious problems with different utilities in very different regions, including Komi, Tuva, again that Bashkortostan, the ones that are so far away from Moscow, that do not share Putin's vision of the restoration of the Russian Empire, and actually know very little about the life in this classical Muscovy. They simply pay their taxes and get nothing from the Kremlin. Another reason, another trigger for them to ask, why do we need to be a part of the Russian Federation? And watching different channels and vloggers, I come across this idea more and more often. So we have talked about gasoline crisis, no solution offer, and everybody understands that. Then electricity, that is absent in many regions, and of course in Crimea. It is a very active process right now on the peninsula, and everybody understands why, both in Ukraine and in Russia. We need to liberate these territories, and that's why they do not have gasoline there to supply Russian army, problems with electricity, and we still offer the invaders an option to escape. This is the reason why the Kerch Bridge is still operating. And problems with running water in some of Russia's regions, again because of electricity, because of money. All is needed to maintain utilities, to maintain standards of life, but Putin never cared about the standards of life of Russians. That is why I think they will enter this autumn in an extremely dangerous mode. And that is why different Russian oligarchs appear on these first pages of magazines like The Economist, if I'm not mistaken. This is both a good and a bad signal. A good signal, Putin's system is shaking, he's losing control, everybody understands they need to end this war. But the bad thing, they want to trick you and to show you some faces as new faces, when in reality these are Putin's accomplices. These are people also responsible for his war, for the Russian war, who made him the president, who did not object when the so-called special military operation began. They simply look for these escape routes and versions for their own future when his collapse becomes imminent. But these are similar Russian imperialists, and personally I do not see any real Russian oppositioner. If you know someone, let me know in the comments below. I would love to see such a person, honestly. But I think we don't have such. That's why I personally believe that the only way for the Russian Federation to become democratic is to become a lot of different countries with very different histories, traditions, but more chances to nurture that democracy. And also, I feel a little bit angry when people keep asking me, do I believe in democracy in Russia? Democracy is just like a skill, just like your child will not begin reading if you don't teach the child to read. So if we never teach Russians democracies, they will never produce it. There is no period in the Russian history when they were democratic. And no, the period of Yeltsin was not an example, because Yeltsin actually began his war against Chechnya and also shoot at the Russian parliament. Don't you quarrel with me, because I know their history very well, unfortunately, because it was spoiling my country's history for a very long period of time. But if you see any interesting opposition figures in Russia, do let me know in the comments below. And remember to check Anna Danilchuk for a new video on the channel that I connect here. It's about Russian vloggers also changing their opinion about the supreme leader of the Kremlin. Follow me on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, Discord, and Substack. You will find the links in the description of this video. And of course, check the merch shop. We have -15 on everything, -15 on everything, and that's a good way to turn into ambassadors of Ukraine, reminding the world about our fight. And thank you so much for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channels. But most importantly, thank you for standing with Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!